Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our friends in Israel, the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and any place else that I may have missed. I want to extend a warm welcome to our participants and panelists. Thank you for setting aside the time to gather today for this meaningful presentation, co-hosted by Biachad Jewish Occupational Therapy Network and Israeli Society of Occupational Therapy. A few quick housekeeping notes. Participants will remain muted throughout the presentation and can submit questions to moderators via the chat. To receive a certificate of participation, you must attend the entire session and submit the course survey, which will be posted in the chat and sent via email at the conclusion of the event. My name is Jeffrey Rothman. I am an American by birth, an occupational therapist by profession, and Israeli by choice. I have over 30 years of experience in OT practice, both in the United States and in Israel. I've worked in New York, Maryland, and Florida in the United States, and I worked for Shirutei Breiut Klalit in Haifa, Israel. Additionally, I have founded and run a nonprofit, Martial Arts for the Soul, which teaches self-defense to the Jewish community. I believe that it is a vitally important skill today and will remain important for the foreseeable future. I am proud to support today's event and our colleagues as they represent themes that are important in my life and I believe necessary in our world today. We have a variety of panelists with us who represent academia, research, clinical and school-based practice with several common threads. They have all experienced some form of difficulty professionally because they are Jewish and/or Israeli. Some have had difficulty publishing. Others faced professional boycotts. Another commonality is that they all said no more and stepped up to defend themselves and others, whether it be by supporting struggling students, by publishing, or privately supporting individuals. In many ways, there are threads connecting these people to Queen Esther, a hero of the Jewish people from the holiday of Purim, which we celebrated 2 weeks ago. They stood up at such a time, very much like this, and will share their experiences with us so that we may reflect and find opportunities for engagement and support. Our first presenters will discuss a very special organization which represents some of the best Jewish and Israeli values. Tzahal, or as it is known in English, the Israel Defense Force, is a binding organization in Israeli society. This seminar will explore how, in a uniquely Jewish and Israeli way, Tzahal has embraced a segment of society that has not traditionally been included in military cultures throughout the world. I had the opportunity over 30 years ago to witness an earlier incarnation of this inclusive program, and I can tell you that that singular morning made an impression upon me that lasted until today. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our first two distinguished speakers, the prolific researchers Asnat Bar Chaim, PhD, an occupational therapist and a senior lecturer at Ono Academic College, and Efrat Selenikio, PhD, an occupational therapist and a lecturer at Ono Academic College. Asnat and Efrat will discuss work skills development and quality of life outcomes in autistic adults through military service integration. Although we are hoping for quiet and calm in Israel, due to the current war with Iran, their segment will be presented in a pre-recorded format. Immediately following the presentation, there will be time for live discussion, so please place your questions for them in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm pleased and hello.
Hi, can I please get a thumbs up to make sure that everyone can hear?
It's very, very nice to be here. I'm Dr. Efrat Selanikio, and I'm pleased and excited to present.
There's no audio now.
Okay, sorry guys. Appreciate your patience.
I'm sorry, but given the current situation in Israel, I'm recording this presentation in case I need to take shelter. But I hope that I can be with you through the whole meeting, and I will make it a little bit shorter than expected so we can have a discussion at the end. And again, before I begin, I'd like to thank you so much for inviting us. Some of you may know that I presented this research last month at the WOOFIT conference, where a group of attendees, mostly Canadians, arrived wearing kafiyas to protest the study involvement with the IDF and chose to disrupt this presentation. It was an unfortunate experience, of course, but the support I received afterward, including this heartfelt invitation from Beyachad, made it truly meaningful. So thank you so much. And I will start with first introducing our program, our Ro'im Rachok program, and later on the research that we conducted. So here we go. I hope you enjoy. About technology again. The Ro'im Rachok program was founded in 2013 with a clear vision to provide young autistic adults the opportunity to develop their skills and contribute meaningfully to themselves, to society, and to the country. This is achieved through military service, which is compulsory in Israel, as you know, at the age of 18. I'm so glad that in this forum there is no need to elaborate or explain what an important milestone military service is for every young person graduating high school, and how deeply military service is embedded in the Israeli culture. In the past, autistic high school graduates were automatically exempt from military service, which resulted in feelings of disappointment, sense of being left behind, and not integral part of Israeli society. The Ro'im Rachok program opened the opportunity for them to volunteer upon their will for military service, just like any other young person. We view military service as a first step in the field of employment that paves the way for future work and life career. At the core of the program is a win-win approach. The military benefits from highly skilled and motivated soldiers, while the soldiers gain a meaningful and empowering service experience. Our first focus was military service, but soon enough we understood that we're also referring to the future employment world. Here is the entire program in a brief and graphical way. The program follows a structured 5 stages process, as you can see. It begins with initial screening, the admission stage, followed by a 3-month pre-military professional training course, which I will elaborate in the next slide, and a 4-month trial period within the IDF unit. Only after successfully completing these 3 stages, and if the participant is found suitable and actively chooses to continue, they proceed with enlistment for 3 years. To date, 6 military professions have been identified for program participants: aerial and satellite photographs analysis, programming, data analysis, geographic information system, which deals with mapping, electronics, and data tagging for AI. Participants and commanders are supported through all the program stages by our professional team, including occupational therapists, speech therapists, and psychotherapists. After more than a decade of experience, we know this support is our key for success. Here you can see the training course and the difference between the training course and the military service itself. The training course takes place in a civilian facility and lasts 3 months, during which a group of trainees learn the military profession, about 15 to 16 in each course. The course simulates the military environments and aims to prepare participants for the IDF on a professional, functional, communicative, and emotional level. A broad team of professionals, as I said, from the program, alongside commanders from the units, accompany the course. In the military service, however, it is categorized by the distribution of soldiers across different units, with only small groups serving together. Each unit is supported by a designated professional, providing guidance to both commanders and soldiers. Since we are all occupational therapists, just so you know, the occupational therapist in her work focuses on basic and instrumental activities of daily living, work skills, military conduct, executive functions, and more. The soldiers enlist in periods of 1 year, and then they sign for another year, and next they sign for 8 months, just like any other soldier. Each year, their continued service is based on mutual agreement, where the soldier wishes to continue and the commanders and Ro'im Rachok programs professionals approve their ongoing role. Today, at any given moment, and I'm very proud that approximately 160 soldiers are serving in active duty, spread across around 30 different units in 5 corps. And approximately 600 soldiers have enlisted through the program, and over 80 of them are employed in the open market at a variety of leading workplaces in Israel, such as Intel, Microsoft, eBay, and more. All participants, commanders, managers are supported regularly by Ro'im Rachok professional team. And just before we go to the study, it is important to understand that autism at work is challenging. Okay, recent research by Mason highlighted that autistic adults experience lower quality of life than the general population across physical, psychological, social, and environmental domains. However, the study identified several positive predictors of quality of life. The first predictor was being employed. The second one was receiving support. Work for transition for autistic individuals often occurs in environments prioritizing productivity and efficiency over accommodating their unique needs. Despite cognitive abilities, only 35 to 55% of autistic adults obtain employment, often in part-time or unpaid positions. Additionally, 22% work below their educational capacity. Given these challenges, it becomes imperative to explore ways to enhance employment opportunities for autistic individuals, as employment is closely tied to well-being in adulthood and fulfilling crucial social, financial, and psychological needs. In the current study, we examined for a decade the changes in work skills and quality of life. Our participants, as you can see, they all have, of course, autism diagnosis. They have fluent literacy abilities and basic independence and social communication skills. And they were approved by the IDF mental health authorities. And these are our measurements: the quality of life questionnaire by Shalak and Keith, and the AWSQ by Professor Einat Gal and Professor Naomi Katz. We examined changes at 3 time points: pre-course, as you can see, and at the end of the course, and after 1 year of military service. The findings are very exciting and interesting. In work skills, as you can see in the left chart, we found significant improvement between the pre and post course. And while no changes were found during military service, the Roim Rachok program soldiers maintained their skills during the service, which was made us very happy. And we also found significant improvement in quality of life at all time points. We attribute this improvement to the sense of productivity and belonging that opened for the autistic soldiers upon entering the military service track. Findings reveal significant, moderate, positive correlation between work skills and quality of life. This suggests that possessing better work skills is associated with a higher sense of quality of life. So to summarize, the Roim Rachok program has shown significant improvements in both quality of life and work skills for its participants. These findings are consistent with the program's overall data. Work-supported program generally and specifically tailored for autistic individuals paved the way for employment and are, of course, directly connected to quality of life. Thank you so much for your attention and sincere appreciation to all contributors and participants in this research. And now we'll be happy to answer any question you have.
Okay, we'll just invite Efrat, who is here. Just 1 minute, I'll find her. Hi, Efrat. So good to see you. I'll ask you. Oops, sorry, Ariella. I accidentally asked you to unmute. Where did you?
Okay.
Oh, here. Efrat.
I'm here, and I see also Asnat
Asnat is-
Bahay-Meres is also
Yes.
here. You can also wave Asnat. And as I said, we passed the first part with you together. We had a rough night. I hear it in my voice talking to you on the morning when I recorded this presentation, and the rough day. We also had a rough day, but I hope this evening will be better and I can stay with you for the whole meeting. But we are here, and we'll be happy to answer any question or to discuss any issue about autism, employment, military service, and so on.
Okay, Asnat, could you please unmute yourself? And if you have questions, can you please put them in the chat?
Yeah. Okay, I see the first question. Can you describe the interest of the participant to join and to serve in the military? For most of them, the Roim Rachok program for our first cohorts, it was like a dream come true. They couldn't believe they can enlist and join the army just like anyone else. Everyone in Israel serves in the military. They were automatically exempt. So this was the first time, they go to school like everyone. Sometimes they go in special education. Sometimes they go in the general education system. But this was the first time when the authorities told them, you're not like everyone else. You stay at home. You cannot be a soldier. You cannot serve your country. You cannot do national service even, okay? And they stayed at home. Some of them, and I'm talking, our participants are all highly cognitive abled, okay? And we can see today their contribution to the military. So they can serve. They need support, but they can serve and contribute in a meaningful way. So for them, unlike other soldiers, okay, that we all enlist to the army. Nobody asks us, do you want to serve? Don't you want to serve? We go to military service. They volunteer, okay? They come and volunteer from their own will. No one can make them. And they give almost 3 years, 2 years and 8 months, like any other soldiers. Some of them are so good that they stay beyond these 3 years. The unit wants to keep them, okay? So I hope I answered the question, and okay.
Yeah. And here's another question from Annette. How did the other IDF soldiers react to this program?
How did the other what?
How did the other soldiers react to this program?
Okay. So it's never easy, as you know. We put them in a very professional positions to interpret satellite and photograph from, it's and the first reaction was of the soldier, what can autistics do what I do? Not only they can do it sometimes better. They are fully focused on the work. They don't go to chit chat. They don't go out. They don't go to smoke. They come to work and to do the work. Okay. So at first we thought we will distribute them like one Roim Rachok soldier in the general unit or cohort of 5 soldiers. Okay, section or so on. But we understood that it depends. Okay, some of them go alone into a group of 5 soldiers and work together with them. Some of them stay together in a group like of 10, of a section of 10 Roim Rachok soldiers with a designated commander. Okay, because it depends on the units. Sometimes our soldier, Roim Rachok soldier, when he is with other soldiers, not Roim Rachok soldiers, he spends a lot of his energy on social connections, and he's got no energy left to work. So some of them prefer to be together with other autistic soldiers, and some of them prefer to be without other autistic soldiers in their unit. So it depends. But the other soldiers, after like few weeks, you forgot the sign they have on their forehead. You forget it. You see the soldier in front of you. Okay, you don't remember he is autistic. Okay, you see Yossi, you see, I don't know, Moshe, you see the soldier himself. And at first in the unit, after our first course, they enlisted and started doing their work. We came to the number of 30 units, not because we were looking for places. Other commanders heard about the good work and they approached us. They asked us for autistic soldiers. Okay, they have a few prizes from they did very, very classified and important work also in Amplify, also in this October 7th, and they are doing really, really good job. Okay, not because they're autistics, because they're good at what they do. Not all of them, some of them better, some of them less, but as a group, they are doing very, very good. Okay, and the other soldiers learn to appreciate it, if I am understandable. Okay, they want to work with them, and some of them really make social connections, some of them less. The autism does not go anywhere, it stays, but still they manage to work together.
Okay, I have a comment and question from Jeffrey. It says, I spent the morning with an autistic IDF unit in 1994, but they did not appear to have this level of serious contribution to the IDF. It seemed at the time to be more of a service for the soldiers. What year was this program initiated? Okay,
so he's right. We still have programs today for people with intellectual disabilities, for people with autism, which are that not that high cognitive abilities, okay? They dismantle computers, you know, they do simple work. Sometimes they work in kitchens, in military kitchens, and they help, but it is more to give them the good feeling that they are contributing. In Roim Rachok, we base the program on a win-win situation, okay? If a soldier is not contributing to the unit, if the work is not being done, like the work is done without him, plus the delta that he is contributing to the unit, he will not stay there. We will find him another position, another unit where he can contribute. Otherwise, it's not, we want to work on a win-win situation, so the commanders and the units will want them to come along and to join the forces. And I didn't say here because I thought it goes without saying, but you know, numbers are going up. In United States, the CDC, they inform us about 1 in 44 now even. Okay, so we all need to be concerned about placing them, and the severity level 3, okay, by the DSM, which are less functional, okay, they remain the same 35 to 45%. The big rise is in the cognitively abled autistics, okay?
Great, thank you. This is from Tsipora. Are there any other groups of young people who are excluded from Army service for whom this research could potentially be used as a model for a similar program?
Yeah. Osnat, would you like to I think you were there in groups.
Sure.
In general, when you all your materials, they don't go between high school to the military service. If you want to be exempt, you need to give your papers and to ask to be exempt, okay? I'm trying to think, even when at first 10 years ago, when we came to the military, we said, we have this great group. They can be great soldiers. They told us, we don't know how to train autistics. You train them, okay? You train them, and then we can absorb them. We can take them and use them as soldiers with your supports, okay? Military, it needs us as professionals to support them, okay? So there are now few, many populations are serving now with I think the right support, or I'm trying to think about a full population that is not enlisted. Maybe people with intellectual disabilities, but still, if someone wants to be enlisted, now even people very disabled in wheelchairs, but not only wheelchair, very coming with their Philippine care to military service, okay? So it's really the people's army. I don't know how to say it. This is what it means.
But they do have, but they do have to have high motivation and sometimes to fight their way to volunteer because of the support. So there are several programs, but also mental health sometimes. It depends.
Thank you. We have 2 comments, and these will be the last ones, from Sam, who says thank you for providing these opportunities, and a carry-on comment from Wendy, who says the same. Thank you for offering this inclusive opportunity. How many cohorts have run through the program, and what is the plan for research to track long-term outcomes? And we'll end with that question.
Okay. We for about 10 years we collected data about quality of life, about work skills, about well-being, about executive functions, and so on. And we have few studies that have been already published, like the efficiency of our soldiers from the point of view of the commanders, just for example. And we have few papers published already. I can pass them on if you would like to see them. And now our focus is self-identity in light of the diagnosis, the autism diagnosis. We focus on that, on research, and we have also we have studies going on as for communication skills and so on. And there was another question. Every course, we have two professions, two military professions. In each profession, about between 15 to 16. Last week, a course was supposed to be open, but it was postponed after Passover, after Pesach. And we have 31 students overall, 15 for programming, and I think 16 for data analysis. Okay.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. First of all, we know that's not, muvan ma'alav, as they say. And thank you for sharing your important research. Really very inspiring to see how Israel continues to lead the way on inclusion under difficult circumstances and in complex environments. So we really appreciate your time and your contributions to the profession. And
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
Yeah.
Really, it was very
Yes.
We're with you. You see all the hearts on the screen?
Yeah.
Thank you from all of us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. Now we are inviting Barbara Mazur, Cynthia Perlman, and Pamela Wiener, Canadian OTs, to discuss their article, Upholding Pluralism in Occupational Therapy, a response to recent calls for political alignment. Thank you for being with us today. I'll just get you to unmute yourselves. 1 second, Barbara, Cynthia, and Pamela.
Cynthia? Yes, hi everyone. So I'm here joined by my colleagues, Dr. Annette Mainemer, Dr. Barbara Mazur, and Pamela Wiener. I believe Judith Friedland is on, and other authors of our paper. I'm Cynthia Perlman. I'm Associate Professor at the School of Physical and Occupational Therapy, McGill University, and I'm also Director of Interprofessional Education in the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences at McGill. So we would like to give you some background information, set the stage of how we came about writing a letter to the editor in response to the article by Zafran et al. Entitled Shattering Silence, Inviting Dialogue, Anti-Oppressive Occupational Therapy During the Genocide of Palestinians. We were also made aware of which was published or generated in December 2024 in a Canadian journal, I believe, or a Canadian journal called Aporia, which is a nursing journal published by the University of Ottawa in Canada. And this was the first call, one of the first calls that stated that occupational therapists need to speak out for justice and human rights, particularly with values in advocacy and human rights, and to work in the context of colonial oppressions, including genocide. And they specified specifically genocide of Palestinians. So this first article certainly became of interest to us and of concern. And then later, the article by Zafran and et al., which was published in the Canadian Journal of Occupational Therapy. I'm just looking at the date, sorry.
2025.
Yeah, fall 2025, or actually summer, July 2025, or perhaps a little bit before, sorry. This paper also called for occupational therapists to avoid silence and promote human rights, which, you know, are required to advocate for our profession concerning social justice, and really highlighted specific terms and opinions about apartheid, occupational apartheid, colonialism, genocide, and oppression, particularly against Palestinians, and it really highlighted the conflict between Israel and Palestine. And this raised concern not only for us professors, scholars at McGill University, but we called out across Canada for support of our colleagues and scholarly practitioners, and decided to write a letter to the editor of CJOT, the Canadian Journal of Occupational Therapy, because this article by Zafran et al. Really expressed a desire for open dialogue. They seemed to express, let's have open dialogue, let's talk about, how occupational therapists need to avoid silence and become more unified on this cause. And so we felt the need to write this letter to the editor and again address the open dialogue. Again, in terms of genocide, oppression, colonialism is of concern. I mean, who gets to decide who is oppressed? And we were concerned about that. Since October 7th, we know that, and even before, particularly in Canada with issues about Indigenous communities and Indigenous people and addressing that. We are aware of, the need for advocacy in our profession, but this raised even a bigger concern. And so we are aware that the academic institutions did take on the movement of, dealing with anti-oppression, advocacy, righting the wrongs, so to speak. So we wrote a letter to the editor, to CJOT, and encountered several obstacles. It took a while before our letter was reviewed, and it actually went through a peer review process, which is atypical for a letter to the editor. So we were surprised by that, and it just seemed to take quite a long time, despite our efforts to communicate with the editor at CJOT. Also, at before it became published, during the Christmas break, towards the end of December 2025, we were asked to quickly, within a 24-hour period, create to translate our letter to the editor in French. And this was also an atypical request for a letter to the editor within such a short time frame. A week or two later, they retracted that request and said it was no longer needed, even though we scrambled to translate our letter to the editor in French. It was published January 8th, along with some other letters to the editor. And we know that CJOT has heard from many different communities across the world about concern about this article. And, we'd also like to generate a conversation about what is oppression, what are the values of our profession in occupational therapy, where is it headed? And I invite our co-authors to now pipe in.
Barbara, you go first and then I'll go.
Okay, so thank you, Cynthia. I think you've summarized it quite well.
you know, there was concern about the original article and its approach. And we were glad to gather a large group of signatories to a letter to the editor to dispel some of the myths and give a different point of view. However, the whole process was really very problematic and very lengthy. We weren't getting answers. We were told there were several other events that occurred along the way, like we're not reviewing your letter right now because we're changing all of our instructions for the authors, and then the time frame was always very lengthy on their part, but then we had very short deadlines. So we, it's hard to know what the reasons for all that was, but we do feel that we needed to speak up and see if we can really have an honest dialogue rather than just being kind of not silence, but putting us through many obstacles. Pam, did you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I think a very common feeling that others have had in the original article was the lack of context. There was very little about Israel in terms of being a homeland for Jews and why that came about and how that came about and those kinds of things. So I think the Jewish the Jews who feel connected to Israel, that perspective was absolutely missing. And I think we talked a lot about that. I had very big concerns about the reviewers. Again, we did touch base with the editor about that. The reviewers, one review, some critiques were, of course, great and helpful and made it better, but others were concerning to us. So, for example, we were really, I guess, criticized for our lack of peer-reviewed articles, which, is understandable, but of course there's a conflict going on currently, so it's very hard. We all know how long it takes. In the original article, however, 2/3 of the references were in fact not peer-reviewed. And we felt, again, that we were being treated in a different way. Of course, we don't know what went on behind the scenes, but we did look at the references of the original article, and it was 2/3 non-peer-reviewed and 1/3 peer-reviewed. But again, we took that comment and did our best, and I think really strengthened our paper. The reviewers themselves, one told us that we saw this as a geopolitical article. One told us they are not an expert in that. Another one of the reviewers commented on the genocide and called it a genocide in their own dialogue with us, in their own written work. That was of concern to us. We felt demonstrating a bias in some of the review process, and we're concerned about it. I'm just looking here at our letter that we have since written. We felt that there was an interesting twist. The article was being referred to as a commentary, but it actually came out as an article. I'm not sure what article meant, by the way. I'm not sure about that. Some have very clear definitions of what those different categories of manuscripts are. So that was a bit of a concern. I was a little bit concerned about how our colleagues were treated. I did connect with a few other people who had written to the journal, and they were outwardly rejected. I think it was shocking to them that a letter to the editor was not being seen as an opinion. And I'll stop there. I don't know if Annette wants to say anything.
I think you covered the really important points. I want to give a chance for people to give their comments, and we could respond to them.
Sorry, Annette, I can't see you here.
Can I just add that in general, the process for me was very silencing. And we talked again as a group of that sense. We felt very silenced by the process.
Are there any questions? Thank you so much for sharing this with us and reminding us how important it is to be cool-headed, clear, and just continue speaking up no matter the obstacles. Obstacles are not always just not getting a platform, but how they go about not giving the platform and the obstacles that they put in the way. And so silencing takes lots of forms. And sometimes it's also just a plan of attrition. How do we tire these people out? And it takes a lot to keep up. So thank you for inspiring us that our voices are so important on a political level as well.
I just want to add that we are following up with the journal. So I do want to say that everything we've said here, we are following up, and it's already been stated in a letter.
Annette, did you want to add anything? I do apologize that you were
The one thing that really concerns me is the consequences of the publication itself. I find that there's a lot of backlash. Like I have lots of physicians coming to me from Canada and outside Canada, very surprised by the position of that paper and how it reflects on the profession. So that's a big concern, I think, in terms of the repercussions of coming out with something, because it's not the associations that's making a statement. These are individuals' opinions, but it reflects on the profession because it's in the professional journal. So that's a concern.
absolutely. It gives it a level of credibility, right? A sense of representation that is not necessarily correct. And also, obviously, the influence is so great because it arrives in everyone's mailboxes. So, any other comments? We are going to have to move on, but thank you very, very much for the work that you're doing. We know that these are not easy days in Canada, so we're sending all our love to all of you too. From, across the continents, doesn't feel like anywhere's feeling very good, but Canada's really had a rough week. So, and time. All right, thank you so much. Please just give me a minute to collect our next presenters. Lots of hearts from the crowd. All right, I'm just gonna okay. All right, I need some background music while we've got this going on. Okay, so we have Wendy and we have Lisa, and I will make sure to get this all right this time. I apologize for the last one. Wendy, Lisa, Lola, Allison, Rivka, and Maya, right? Oh, hold on, I've got two more. Rivka. Apologies, everyone. Where's Lola? Here. Oh, here we are, Lola. And Maya, please just keep an eye on the clock if possible. We're running a few minutes late, so we have until 10:20. So if you could just be aware. Maya, I'm going to find you in one moment. Here we go, Maya. And I'll just say a little something when it's 5 minutes away from the end.
Thank you. So we'll be presenting a series of, not series, but a group of publications that have come out in the US about this topic and about Jewish forward issues, we'll call it. So we'll just quickly go through and introduce ourselves very quickly. Why don't we just go down this list in order?
Yeah, hi, I'm Lisa Gordon Handler from Hofstra University in New York.
Hi, I'm Lola Halperin, and I teach at Sacred Heart University in Connecticut.
I'm Allison Herman. I am Associate Professor at Colorado State University.
Hi, I'm Rivka Malinsky. I'm a professor at Touro University.
I'm Wendy Staub. I'm the department chair at St. Louis University.
Hi, I'm Maya Wolf. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist in private practice in Manhattan and Bergen County, New Jersey. I also am an adjunct professor at Iona University.
Okay, let's kick it off. Allison?
Yeah, so thank you, Wendy. So I'm just going to give a little description about our recent article that was published in OT Practice. It was actually featured as the cover article in February's OT Practice. So just a little description. This article was written primarily out of love and respect and in memory of our OT colleague, Carmel Gott. It began as a memorial, but to be published in OT Practice, it evolved into an educational piece on doing, being, belonging, and becoming. We were grateful to include a beautiful photo of Carmel and share how she used her OT skills like yoga and calming practices to help others cope while she was held captive in the tunnels. The article also describes how traumatic events like wars and other natural disasters affect not only those directly involved in the events, but also creates a ripple events to other communities. Although I didn't personally know Carmel, I felt deeply connected to her as both an OT and a Jew. And writing this article was a form of doing that was healing for me. We also highlighted an example of doing and belonging from co-author Maya Wolf and colleagues who created what was called Carmel's Calm Kits, which were sensory kits to help children in Israel self-regulate while sheltering from attacks. And then together, these actions reflect the pan-occupational paradigm that health and well-being emerge when doing, being, belonging, and becoming are integrated. As we all know, meaningful occupational engagement is health promoting and can help individuals and communities move back towards health after disruption. Thank you.
Before we move on from this article, I just want to share that this article has made it to Israel and to Carmel's graduate program and her supervisor and her father and her aunt, who is also an OT. This article will be translated into Hebrew and published in the Israeli Journal of OT in July 2026. Okay, on to the next publication.
So I just want to talk a little bit about the background of this publication. This article was based off the findings of our prior article. So about a year ago, we published the results of a study that we conducted in United States. We were concerned about the rise of anti-Semitism in the US and its impact on the Jewish population in general, but specifically Jewish students on US campuses. And so we conducted a survey. 147 Jewish students were included in the survey, and we surveyed them about their exposure to anti-Semitism, its impact on their occupational engagement, and we also measured their levels of anxiety and resilience. And what we discovered was that most of them had been exposed to anti-Semitism. It had negatively impacted their sleep, their rest, their ability to study, their social participation, leisure, as well as their ability to plan their future. And we also discovered that 36% of the participants had severe levels of anxiety despite average levels of resilience. And so we published the results of our study in the Occupational Therapy Journal of Research. And more recently, we published an article in OT Practice, again talking about intergenerational trauma, and more specifically, Jewish students and the impact of what's happening on their occupational engagement and the need for OT practitioners and scholars to be aware of what is happening for this population. And I'll let Lisa explain a little more.
Thank you, Lola. Yes, with this current issue that just came out in March, we wanted to outline some suggestions using a trauma-informed care approach framework to help occupational therapists in their role working with individuals, students on campus who've encountered these types of experiences where they feel oppressed, have any other anti-Semitic experiences. So these 4 strategies that we recommended are, number 1, validation for the students to just recognize, acknowledge their experiences in response to anti-Semitism on campuses, how it impacted their engagement in their occupational role as a student. So for validation, any occupational therapist working with individuals should be able to recognize and acknowledge where they may have some gaps in their own knowledge base or their understanding about any populations that feel marginalized or oppressed. So that would be important to make sure that we are able to establish a good rapport with them where they feel heard, trusted, and there's a good solid relationship that's able to be built. The second suggestion we made was to be able to foster a sense of resilience. Even though the students were experiencing high levels of anxiety, they did recognize that they still maintained some level of resilience, which is great. So when we are able to do that for them, we can help affirm their Jewish heritage identity. We can empower them. We can provide advocacy for them on campus so that they are able to provide and get accommodations for their dietary restrictions or holiday needs, either on campus as a student or at their fieldwork experiences. And then thirdly, we had 4 recommendations. The third one was to provide culturally competent resources. Many of these students felt that they needed some kind of mental health resources to help them. There's Nesher's, I think it's our Gesher's supports program on campus. They have Hillel, other social organizations, Chabad, where they can actualize their social interaction skills and participation. That was one of the areas that the students were definitely feeling like they didn't have access to or feel safe with on campus. And lastly, we wanted to be able to model as ourselves, as educators, faculty, a cultural humility in our classrooms. So that be able to provide integration of a Jewish perspective in the classroom, perhaps, or in our curriculum, so that that could actually counterbalance the erasure that students feel when they're in the classroom, so they feel that inclusion, and we can, promote a respectful dialogue between students in any classroom, whether they're Jewish students or, any Jewish students. So we want to, promote a fulfilling and meaningful experience for them on their journey as a student on campus. And I think that's pretty much, well, those are the main suggestions that we had.
Okay, so on to the next US publication. This is completely parallels the article, the letter to the editor, and the experiences that we recently just heard about from the Canadian group of OTs. So we also here in the US were very concerned about the article that was published in CJOT by Zafran and colleagues. I felt, many of us felt, it was jarring seeing the word genocide in the title of an article in a professional journal. And in reading it, was even more concerning that it was published in an OT journal, but had nothing to do with occupational participation or professional practice. It was a geopolitical article published in an OT journal. In reading it, we found that there were several instances where we felt just terms and references that were made and statements that were made were untrue. We felt that there was a good bit of anti-Semitic trope, and when we searched for the term genocide in the article, this original article, found that that term was used over 90 times in one article, which at that point, now we're moving on towards propaganda, and we felt really compelled to write a response to counter that language, because words do in fact matter. And since the original article was touting a request for open dialogue, we said this is a perfect opportunity to respond. We met very, very similar challenges as the Canadian group, with a lot of delays, concerning comments from the reviewers. I've published a lot in my career, and I found myself saying things that I have never said to another reviewer before, but felt the need to really stand our ground. We also, on December 23rd, were given a request to produce the full text of our letter in French. We had a 3-day turnaround. Fortunately, none of us are doing anything on Christmas Day, so we did get the publication translated into French by the 3-day deadline. Only to about 2 weeks later, received another email that that said, "Oh, we're sorry, we actually don't need the publication in French," and it was never published in French. So the timelines were a little questionable, and the way that the manuscript was handled was concerning for us. We did follow up our letter with a formal letter, not for publication, but to leadership in the Canadian Association. And I will say that we did have a meeting with leadership, and it was very positive, and we felt very heard. And there, some things were problematic, some things were just a perfect storm that all happened at once. But we are confident that it is being addressed and handled as best possible. So all of these articles, the original publication, as well as 5 follow-up letters to the editor, can be found on the CJOT website. And these are all of the publications and presentations and posters that have come out in the US essentially since October 7th.
So,
Rivka, you froze.
there is an article that came out early, more than a year ago, in the Open Journal of Occupational Therapy, titled "Addressing the Needs of Jewish Clients and Students with a Trauma-Informed Approach," that is referenced in the research article that Professor Harper was describing. But we are grateful for the experience that we had with the Open Journal, which was, in comparison, an extremely positive one. Mm-hmm. Having said that, there were some questions that we had been asked to cover, but I'm not sure if the moderators want us to answer those questions now, or in the interest of time, leave it there. But I did want to just share that we had very similar experiences in the American Association. We also had experiences of bizarre responses to articles that were submitted that included classic tropes and complications. We did also find
Rivka, you're frozen.
To freeze, but I don't know how to change that. So I'm going to just apologize for technology of which I have no control. But again, I do think that there is an attempt by having these back-to-back articles to ensure that Jewish members are feeling that their voice does have a place and that they are heard. So again, there's a lot of challenge, but we need to recognize the positive when it happens. And then I leave it to the moderators if you want us to go through some of the questions, or if you want us to answer the questions of the participants.
Sure. Thank you so much. Maybe you can answer a couple of the questions while people in the audience share their questions. So maybe if you do have some other things that you prepared, so you still have a couple of minutes.
Thank you.
The breadth of work that you've done, there were quite a lot.
Right. So some of the questions I think we covered in the presentation, but I think if I can ask each of the panelists, what are you planning moving forward, or what do you have as advice to others who are embarking on that process of being more active or more outspoken?
I think, sorry, go ahead, Maya.
I was just going to say, I think, connecting with other Jewish OTs and Israeli OTs and finding a way to, whether it's research or letters to the editor in response to something questionable that's already been written, or in whatever capacity you feel comfortable. I think that that's really important. And I also just wanted to mention that, the article that Wendy, Allison, and I had an outpouring of positive responses that we had written, sorry. And since then, it's like I've heard from other therapists across different settings and with other populations experiencing trauma, finding ways to address their clients' needs. And also my colleagues and I that founded Carmel's Kits, Karen Katzman, Vivian Jen Pittman, and Donna Zapin. We've communicated with Carmel's aunt Sigalit, who's an occupational therapist, and plan to continue the project. So I think, as OTs, using our sphere of influence, we can really have an impact in so many ways, whether it's research, writing, fundraising projects, tons of different ways.
I have definitely gotten also very, very positive feedback from folks in Israel as well as here in the US. And one of the interesting things that I've never had happen with any of my previous publications is that people are sharing the article with OT colleagues, with their non-OT colleagues, and spreading it even more with really positive feedback. I get a lot of thank yous. I would say this has been the most meaningful 700 words I have ever published in my career, in a very positive way. It's just the warmth around it, and the tears were flowing in Thailand talking with colleagues. It was great. But in terms of advice, I think we've spoken collectively about the more we can publish and the more we can write these Jewish forward publications about the experiences and research, and if they're out there, if they're published, and then other people are citing them, and also making sure that we're really staying very grounded in what our expertise is, which is occupation, OT practice, occupational participation. I don't have a degree in anything geopolitical. I have my personal views, but I do have a whole lot of expertise in occupation and occupation-based practice and occupational implications of things happening in the context. If we focus it on that, and are providing resources for our colleagues, that's all positive. And the more we can do that, the better.
Thank you. Lola, Lisa, or Allison, do you have something else that you feel we haven't covered that you'd like to?
So go ahead. Allison, go ahead.
One really quick thing. I was sitting in this Zoom the last time this group made this presentation, and I was sitting here listening to all of the things after the war that all of the especially the Israelis had done to support everybody in Israel. And I was sitting thinking, what is there something that I could do? Like I just want to do something. And this article was was really something that I wanted to do to support, to give back. Unfortunately, it was a memorial to someone that was lost, but just, advice, just do. It's what we do as occupational beings, and in whatever way it is. And so thank you to this group for inspiring all of us to just engage in whatever way is meaningful to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. I'm going to second what you just said, and I wanted to share very briefly my personal trajectory with this process. I'm hoping that this will inspire and support others. So for me, even before October 7th, I was very concerned about the rise of anti-Semitism globally, and I gave a presentation at Connecticut OT Association conference about Jewish intergenerational trauma. I was supported. It was very well received. People shared with me that they had learned a lot from it and developed some new insights. And then October 7th happened, and I personally went from, fear and concern for my people. It became outrage and despair. I admit it was a very difficult time for me. I remember not going to work for a week. I was working from my bed, and luckily for me, my coworkers supported me because they understood the level of trauma involved, even though vicarious trauma. Needless to say, most of my family is in Israel, and we all know what that is like. But then I met this wonderful group of Jewish OTs who became my source of inspiration and personal growth. There was this sense of unity and resilience. And today I'm in a place where I feel gratitude, So I went from fear to outrage to resilience to gratitude. And this is what I would like to share with all of you, hoping that we as a collective can continue with this process of, different stages, but overall going forward and growing and becoming even stronger and more unified, and for this journey to be as meaningful as possible and as beneficial as possible to our brothers and sisters in Israel, but also the whole world, other groups who are marginalized and oppressed.
Thank you. Lisa, do you have
Thank you, everybody, for sharing what you've said. And I just wanted to reiterate how I felt also that sense of collaboration over the last 2 years and being able to produce the research and the articles that we've published. And it gave us a voice because over these last 2 years, we've seen how the so-called people who are supposed to be defenders as occupational therapists of all human rights, there was a silence there. So I felt like that we did able to support ourselves and give ourselves a voice to go up against that silence, and the more against that silence that we've seen in the selective human rights movement now.
A great way to describe it. Thank you. There is a space at the American Conference for Jewish practitioners and clinicians to come together. It isn't published in the app or in a public place for safety concerns, but the moderators of this event, or people can just reach out to me directly. I'm happy to share that information. I do agree that coming together and being there for each other enables us to go on the healing journey. Inevitably, there's challenge, and together we find a way to move forward. It's not about finding bootstraps, but about finding heart. So thank you. And thank you for joining us. I'm not sure, again, if there are audience questions. I don't see them.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Thank you so much. I have one comment here, not a question, but if anyone has questions, just now's the time to ask them before we wrap up. So from Annette, from Canada over here, we have a Facebook group called Hineni, Jews in Social Work, with more than 750 North American social workers and other allied healthcare practitioners. We sometimes do petitions about these sorts of issues and have the support of a nonprofit who provides a petition platform and important other support. So we welcome Jewish OTs and are available to work with you when issues come up and make a united voice of Jews in allied healthcare professions, if this is ever useful. We have also done similar initiatives in social work and medicine. So are there any other questions before we wrap up?
And again, I'm not sure where that got posted, and I wasn't sure if I could say, but I do remember that the O&All JOTC is also another organization designed to support practitioners and clinicians and whatever and educators in any way that we can. So, and membership is free, participation in our meetings are free, and so again, there's a value to coming together, and at the same time a desire to stay a little bit under the radar so that everybody can feel safe in that process.
100%. And to be honest, that also reflects how this network came about. I'll just kind of say a quick word. The Biachad network came up 2.5 years ago because we saw what was going to happen. It was very clear. It was starting to happen very early on, but we knew that like the snowball would grow, that the silence was something that we couldn't afford ourselves to rest easy with. And so it's really inspiring to see how people have come together in small groups, big groups, the work that your network is doing, Rivka, and you know, that everyone is, you know, just doing, and it's just like, as I think Maya said, just the spirit of the profession really. And, you know, it's just about, you know, if there's, you know, making dialogue real. Dialogue has to have parties, not just one party and not just voices which represent one side. And it's really important to, you know, show up, because it's really up to us. It's how we create safe spaces for everyone, is to make sure that dialogue stays real and honest, and challenge is good. Challenge is how you know we keep our spaces like full of integrity and strength for everyone, and for especially ultimately for the clients at the end who need to benefit from the services that OTs provide. So thank you very much. I just want to quickly there was one question for Annette and her team from Canada. So I'm just going to read it out. And if you can just clarify, it's from Tal. Sorry to hear you're feeling silenced. I appreciate you sharing about the process of publication. You mentioned a few times your concern about the paper by Zafran. Can you clarify the concern? So if you could just, you may be in.
Yes, let's start and then the others could pipe in. So I think our impression with the review process is that there were obstacles all along the way in submitting a letter to the editor. So that felt like we were being silenced. So that's one thing. And then the reviewers seemed very biased. They did not seem to be unbiased. And they put the letter to the editor, which is typically a letter to the editor is someone's opinion about an article, was put to the standard of a scholarly article. And the standard was higher than the article that was published. And Pamela mentioned that with the peer review references, that we had to have all peer review references, and the article certainly didn't. And then the other concerns was the consequence of that article, how it reflects upon the profession. You know, it came across as biased against Jews and Israel with disinformation. It never talked about oppression felt by Jewish people. It was a very one-sided perspective, and the trauma that was felt by Israelis, the whole context of October 7th was never mentioned. And it came across as a position statement with some kind of consensus, and it was not evidence-based. So that was the concern of the consequence of an article like that, how it represents our profession. And I think lots of people felt unsafe reading that article, like Jewish OTs. And so that's why, you know, we had many people, many clinicians and academics from across the country signing on because they felt very impacted by that article on their day-to-day, just how they felt as an OT in the Canada. So it had a tremendous, there were lots of concerns. And I'm just wondering, Tal is a co-author of that paper. What was the goal or purpose of the article for her? That would be my question back.
Can you just give me a moment to get in touch with Tal? Tal, do you want to answer that or unmute yourself? If you feel comfortable, if she's still here.
Sure. Hi.
Hi. Can I just preface it by saying welcome, and we are gonna definitely, I would love to hear from you, Tal, but we will not expand this conversation into something much bigger. It's really important for in the name of dialogue to just hear, listen, and it's great to have you here with us to be able to answer that question.
Thank you. So yeah, the purpose of my participation in this paper is really going along with my conviction that what's happening in Israel and Palestine is injustice. As a Jewish person, I don't believe in what the Israeli government currently is doing, and the oppression and the horrible destruction and impacting on people who live in Gaza. Many of them are innocent. So I don't want that to be happening in my name. And that's why I'm raising, and I'm in particular concerned about the impact of this war on health care in Gaza, our ability of the healthcare professions there who are being targeted in their ability to protect people there. And as a health professional, I think I have a duty to talk about that.
Tamar, could I pick up where Annette left off and just make one comment to answer the original question? It's Pam.
Oh, Pam. Okay, so long as we're keeping it focused on the article.
Yeah. So the original question I heard was about what was problematic around the article. I think for me, one of the key things, there were many, but I'm just going to say one. The American group of authors really nailed it for me, and we also spoke about it. It was a paper that was asking for dialogue, but mentions genocide many, many times. I don't remember the number that you counted, but they said, I think, over 90. I think we also counted quite a number. And for us, that was oppressive in and of itself. It wasn't defined. It wasn't up for dialogue of what that was meant. It just was stated as fact and restated as fact many, many times. For me, that made it very difficult to think about dialogue.
Tal, did you want to say anything? Or shall we? I mean, maybe it's something that is also, worthy of a longer conversation off screen, because I'm just conscious of the time. But if you'd like to respond, then.
And it's a personal reaction, right? People could react differently.
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter that is what's happening in Gaza is whether it's a official legal definition or not, it is genocide. There is erosion of education, of culture, death of many people, and it's targeted. So whether the word is used or not, if you could ignore the word and read what's written in the paper, you might react differently.
Okay. These things are complex. They require a lot of space to have the conversations. But we appreciate you being here and asking your question, Tal, and we appreciate you, Annette and Pam, also showing up for conversation. These conversations are fraught, and it's really not like a space that we can extend that conversation out. But thank you for being here, everyone. I think ultimately we're all here because we want a profession where we can do our jobs, where we can navigate the personal and the professional, which we were really thrust into so violently. All of us, in the wake of October 7, all of a sudden we needed to answer for things that we didn't think were part of our professional identity or preferred to keep outside of it. That's changed, that dynamic has changed, and it requires us to show up in different ways. And I think everyone is doing that really amazingly based on the conversations that we had today. So thank you. And I'm going to call on Sam for the final 5 minutes. Sam, I have to find you. So on you, Sam. I don't need the background music for it. Okay.
Hi, I'm Sam Cox. I'm an occupational therapist from the United Kingdom. I am not Jewish. I'm an atheist, and I am here really, I think, just to share that from listening to what you guys have spoken to, I really feel like I'm in the company of a lot of Queen Esthers. So kol hakavod for your work and for publishing and not being silenced. I definitely resonate with that feeling of being silenced and not being able to speak. And the way I managed to find an outlet for that was to go back to Israel after 35 years and volunteer in a rehabilitation hospital. That was in November 2024, and that was for 3 months. I hadn't worked in adult rehabilitation for 30 years, but the skills come back. Adult mental health is more my forte. And really, I think a lot of what I was doing there was, yes, I was helping with the staff shortages that they had, because occupational therapists had been directly affected by the events of October 7th. They had been evacuated. They weren't in the area to work. And they were also going to millieus. They were having to do army service, and they weren't there to do the rehabilitation with the patients. We know as occupational therapists with like neurological disorders, we have a finite window when we can get the optimum rehab back for somebody. And so people couldn't just wait for the war to be over. They needed help, and they needed help then. So that was my way, and maybe a psychological help for me to go back and do something useful and be where I could be of need. But I was surprised when I got to Israel. I thought the emblem for occupational therapy that we use in the UK was international, and I found out it wasn't. I'm not an academic. This is not going to be an academic piece. I've really enjoyed listening to the things you've had to say. I've loved listening to the Israeli occupational therapists and how they're being able to utilize the skills of people with autism in the IDF. Autistic people have amazing skills as well, and it's great that is being tapped into. And I hear about the silence that my American and Canadian occupational therapists experience as well. And when I left my wonderful team of OTs at Adi Negev Rehabilitation Hospital, I spoke to them about the emblem that we have for occupational therapy. And in England, it's a phoenix with the staff and the stick underneath it to represent medicine. The phoenix is a mythological bird, and this mythological bird can regenerate itself. But to do that, it has to do it via being consumed by flames. And from those flames, it creates an egg, and it's reborn out of that. And I think we all can appreciate that after October 7th, we all found we had to be reborn in a different way. The tears of the phoenix are supposed to be healing. And as OTs, that's what our job is for. It's about healing. And it was supposed to be the antidote for deadly poison. For me, since October 7th, the rise in anti-Semitism has really been the poison that I think has polluted so many of our lives. And I think the way that we try to keep fighting that is not to be silenced. So I would ask you, continue to support each other. If you see one of your phoenixes' wings are starting to fold in, you lift them, you support them, and you keep publishing your research, you keep inspiring others, you keep supporting our fellow professionals and our students. And I'm just going to finish now by saying, don't let anyone clip your wings. Continue to rise and soar, be the beautiful phoenixes that you are.
Thank you so much, Sam. That was really beautiful. And I want to continue our blessing to the people of the region, all people of the region who are suffering so much now. Whatever side of the border they are on, or the borders, the world is a crazy place for Jews outside of Israel, but for the people of the region, it's a really frightening time. And I hope that we can all bring our OT skills stay focused with them on how we can help people heal and find their full potential and rebuild their lives. So thank you everyone for being here today. And with that, I think we're done.